Masechet Baba Kama Daf Kof Zayin Ve'amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. This is the third halacha that we have in the name of Rabbi Yochanan in this context. Hatoen tanat gana b'pikadon eno chayav ad shichpor b'miksat v'yodeh b'miksat. A shomer who claims that the item that he was watching, let's say it was 2 oxen, right? It says the owner comes and says, I gave you 2 oxen to watch. Where are they? And the owner claims that it was stolen. He is not liable to swear and to pay double for swearing falsely unless he admits to some and denies some. So in that case where he says, I gave you 2 cows, where are they? He said, 1 cow I have here, but the other one was stolen. And he lies about it. So he's admitting to partially that he has to give back something, but denying that he has to give back the other cow. That's the only case. But if he denies the entire thing altogether and says, what cows? I don't know what cows you're talking about. Or both were stolen. And so if he's denying the entirety, then Rabbi Yochanan says he is not liable to pay double. It's likely that what he means, even though he's not saying explicitly, is that he doesn't even have to swear in the first place. Since he doesn't have to swear in the first place, certainly he will not have to pay double for swearing falsely. Now, what is the source? My ta'ama damar kira ki hu zeh. This pasuk we've already seen a number of times regarding a shomer, and if he says on any item that he says shed yomar ki hu zeh, he has to swear. Now, the literal interpretation, the simple pashat, is that where someone says ki hu zeh, this is it, the animal's there, see, you have it all along, meaning he got found. But the Gemara here is interpreting as ki hu zeh, some part of it, that asher yomar, that hu zeh, this part I owe, this part I don't owe, then he has to swear. So that's the interpretation of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, that's Rabbi Yochanan's halacha. You only are liable to give a shivu'ah and then would pay double if you lie falsely, if the shomer admits part and denies part. Ufligad Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, Damar Rabbi Chia bar Yosef. Ayru parshiot katuv kan, v'kativ ki hu zeh, amilveh hu dichtiv. Rabbi Yochanan is in disagreement with Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, who said that this phrase ki hu zeh, although it's written in the context of a shomer, actually does not apply to the current context, but instead, it seems he says only applies. It could also be interpreted as also applies, but let's go with the only applies to a loan. Only in the case of a loan where one says, hey, you owe me $100. The other one, the defendant says, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't owe you anything at all. Then he doesn't have to give a swear, and then the plaintiff has to prove his point, right? Go prove, and then I'll pay you. So if he denies it altogether, that's it. He doesn't have to do anything. But if the defendant says, you said I owe you 100? No, I owe you 50, right? I admit to the 50, but I deny the other 50. In that case, he has to make a vow. That's a classic case of modeh b'miksat. So Rabbi Chia bar Yosef says that only applies to a loan. Now, this is an interesting exegetical lens, that there's a merging of portions, or a mixing up. Even though the word says the word ki hu zeh in this context, it doesn't apply to this context. It's actually mixed up, and the word ki hu zeh applies to the case of milveh. This is applied when there's a certain phrase that doesn't fit with the current context, so it must be that it's said here, but it's really a reference to something else. Now, umay shena milveh, why would there be a difference between a loan and a deposit? Because the it has to do with human psychology. So how come the Torah says that if you admit to part of a claim in a loan, then you do have to swear, because we have a presumption that most people are not so brazen and insolent to lie straight out, 100% lie in front of the creditor. The creditor did you a favor and lent you $100. And now you're going to come and say, what $100? You never gave me anything. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, there are, professional liars that would do that, real con men. But most people are not like that. And so if it's true that they don't owe $100, they don't owe anything, then of course a person will say it because it's the truth. So, I don't owe you anything, fine. But if a person really does owe all $100, then and they're trying to get out of it or trying to buy time, then they're not going to be so brazen to deny the whole thing. And so this person really, he wants to deny the whole thing because, well, he doesn't want to pay. Who wants to pay anything? But the fact that he doesn't say I owe you zero is because he's not so insolent, but he is brazen enough to say, what, 100? Was it really 100? No, it was 50. Right, that much. People are that brazen to reduce it, although they're not going to lie completely. This is human nature. We bend the truth, exaggerate, under-exaggerate, but we don't lie totally, usually. ובכולי בעד דלא דלה. ועד חפר במקצת סבר אי מודין עלה בכולי תבע לי בכולי. השתמית לי מה השתה הדהבו לי זוזה ופרענה. And really, this guy, the defendant, he wanted to admit everything. I mean, he wants to pay. Most people, if you have the money, you want to pay. And the fact, so why did he deny part of it? He says, listen, if I admit that I owe him everything, then he's going to make a claim and make me pay right now. And I don't have the money right now. And so I'm going to evade him, buy some time. So I'm going to say, was it 100? No, I think it was 50. I don't owe you that. Just delay tactics. And so that maybe he'll get a few more days until he can collect the money in order to pay back. That's usually why, that's just human psychology. That's why that's why the Torah says, listen, if you deny 100%, then, okay, we believe you, right? This guy makes a claim. He has no proof. They say he says you owe me $100. He has no proof. You say, I don't know what you're talking about. I never saw you before in my life. You never lent me, or I paid you back already. I don't owe you anything. Then we believe a person because they wouldn't lie outright and be so brazen if it wasn't true. But we do suspect that most people commonly would bend the truth and exaggerate and say, yeah, I do. I know I owe you. Yeah, he's going to recognize that at least. But he's going to say, no, it was 50. I paid you some of it. And he's going to do that to buy time. And therefore, to catch him in his lie, we make him swear to it. So then the threat of a swear, hopefully he will admit and said, okay, I know, you're right. I do owe you the whole thing. I just don't have the money right now. All right, then we get the truth and then we can work it out. But that psychology is only true regarding a loan, where you lent me $100, you did me a favor, I'm not going to be so brazen to lie about the entire thing. But when it comes to a deposit, there you asked me to watch something for you. You're going away, can you watch my fish tank? Okay, so in that case, I would be brazen. I say, what fish? I don't know what you're talking about. You never gave me anything. I gave it back to you already. So since it's not a loan where you're doing me a favor, but rather I'm watching something for you, then a person would be so brazen, because if something happened to it, then he may very well just say, I don't know what, I never got a cow from you. I never got any fish from you. I gave it back to you. And so the psychology doesn't work. And that is why Rabbi Chia makes a distinction between them. Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef makes a distinction between them. But Rabbi Yochanan says, no, I don't make a distinction. And for a pikadon, also, one is liable to make a vow only if he admits to part and denies part. Taneh Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama presents a baraita that also is going to disagree with Rabbi Chia Bar Yosef. right, is not, Rabbi Yosef said it applies to a loan only and not to a pikadon. So the following beraita is going to disagree with Rabbi Chaya bar Yosef and agree with Rabbi Chaya bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that modem miksat rule applies also to a shomer. Taneh Rabbi Rami bar Chama arba'a shomerin tzrichin kefira b'miksat v'hoda'ah b'miksat. The following 4 types of baileys, in order for them to have to swear, it's only if they admit to part and deny part of the claim. It's all the types of baileys. What's the source? Well, the original pasuk in its context, right? We're not taking it out of context, is in the context of a shomer chinam. So certainly a shomer chinam only if he accepts, denies part of it, then he has to make a shevuah. Shomer sachar yalif netina b'shomer chinam. Shomer sachar, we can make a gezerah shava. It says the word netina in both of them. Shoel v'chi yishal vav mosif al inan rishon. For shoel, it says a vav and comes right after it. And so the and comes to connect the shomer with shoel. And therefore the laws of shomer apply to shoel as well. Socher ileman damar ke shomer sachar hainu shomer sachar ileman damar ke shomer chinam hainu shomer chinam. The laws of a socher, a renter who pays to use an item, there is a machloket about whether the laws of a socher are the same as shomer sachar. If so, well, we already proved shomer sachar. Or others say that a socher has the same laws as shomer chinam. Well, we already also have a source for shomer chinam. So either way, the socher is going to have this law that he has to make a swear and pay double if he's lying, only if he admitted to part of the claim. Another halacha in this regard: hatoen tanat ganab bepikadon eno chayav ad sheishlach bo yad. A shomer who claims that the item was stolen, right? I don't have your item anymore, and really he stole it himself. So then he swears, and if he's found to be lying falsely, he has to pay double. That halacha is only true if the shomer first misappropriated the item. Either he ate it or used it. If it was an animal, he worked it, right? He used it for himself illegally. So only if he first uses it for himself, that's an act of appropriating it illegally, and then he makes a claim and it was stolen, and he lies, then and is found to be lying, then he pays double. But if he was watching it properly and then said it was stolen and swore falsely, but he never used it for himself, he would not have to pay double. Ma'itama v'nikra ba'al habayit Elohim im lo shalach yado b'mlechet re'ehu b'klal dishalach bayad michayav lememra de b'shalach bayad askinan. Because the pasuk says that when the Baal Bait here refers to the shomer comes and makes a vow that he did not send forth his hand in his neighbor's goods. So part of his vow is that he did not misappropriate it. That means if it's true that he didn't misappropriate it, then he would not be liable. But if he did misappropriate it, then he would be liable. So we see that this whole halacha of paying double only applies when he used it for himself. So although we see this in the name of Rabbi Chia bar Yosef, Rabbi Chia bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Yochanan disagrees with that. Because Rabbi Yochanan says that one has to pay double even if the animal is standing by its feeding trough. And he's watching it normally. He didn't use it for himself. He's sitting there. He's taking care of the animal. He's feeding it. Nevertheless, if he claims it was stolen, but really he had it the whole time, and he swears, he still has to pay double. Amar Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Davka be'omedet al lebusa kamar, aval shalach bo bayad kana, ushba la mahanya bekelum, od yama afilo omedet al lebusa ka'amar. So now the follow-up question is Rabbi Yochanan, how much is Rabbi Yochanan arguing with the first opinion? Is he saying that one has to pay double only if it's on its feeding trough and acting and being treated normally, but if the shomer misappropriated it, then by misappropriating it, he acquires it, is declared now to be a robber, and therefore he does not have to give a swear, and the swear does not add, does not take away, but he would not have to pay double because of such a swear. So in other words, this law of paying double because you swore falsely, claiming that it was stolen but really you stole it, is only where he was watching it properly and did not misuse it. Is that what Rabbi Yochanan thinks? Or does he say both in both cases, even if he didn't do anything, he would Omet al Ebusa, he has to pay double. And also, he agrees with Rabbi Chia bar Yosef that also, if he misappropriated it, he has to pay double. In both cases, he has to pay double. Is that what Rabbi Yochanan says? So Amale Zolo Shamati. Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, I don't know, I didn't hear an exact answer to your question. Kayose ba Shamati, but I do have a tradition about a similar case that I can use to answer your question. Tamar Rabbi Aseh Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Aseh said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Hatoen Tanat Avad v'nishpa וחזר וטען טענת גנב ונשבע. ובאו עדים פטור, מה טעמה? עליו משום דקנה בשבועה ראשונה. If a shomer, at first he says it was lost, and he swears falsely. But then he says, oh, actually it wasn't lost, it was stolen, and he swears falsely. And then witnesses come and say, actually he has it, and he was keeping it for himself the whole time. He does not have to pay double. Why not? Is it not because when he made the first false vow that it was lost, it's already he acquires it and he becomes a robber, and therefore after he retracts that and makes a second vow, the second vow is meaningless because he is now in the category of a robber, not a shomer, and so one pays double only after lying and saying it was stolen, not after saying that it was lost. So after the first vow, he would not have to pay double, but now by this time he's called a robber, and therefore, for the second vow, he no longer it will not require him to pay double. And if that's the reason, then we can apply it also to this case where he misappropriated it first. Then that's called that he's koneh, he's a robber, just like when he says tanat avad first, and then afterwards when he makes a vow and that it was stolen, well, that he's already a robber, and this vow he doesn't have to make such a vow, and such a vow will not add anything, and we will not be required to pay double because of that vow that it was stolen. So it seems that we can derive it from there, right? Rabbi Zera says, no, that case is different because when he makes a shivu'ah, first that it was lost, then he already fulfills his obligations, no more obligation towards the original owner, right? Yasai de Baalim Bishwa, he fulfilled his obligation towards them. He no longer has any obligation to the owner. That's it. He made the vow, case closed. And so that's why when he makes the next vow that it was stolen, it does not have to pay double. That's different from when he misappropriates it. That does not close the case. He just misappropriated it. Didn't go to court yet. He didn't appease the owner yet, and so the cases are not necessarily the same. And we have yet another version of Rabbi Yochanan's statement that includes Rabbi Zera's explanation here. So here it says explicitly the reason. Rabbi Yochanan says if someone claims, the shomer claims that it was stolen, and he makes a vow, and then he says, no, I changed my mind, I claim that the deposit was first he claims it was lost, and he swears, and then he says, I changed my mind, actually it was stolen, and he swears, and then witnesses come and say he had it the whole time. Since he already fulfilled his obligation towards the owner with the first vow, the second vow does not count, and he does not have to pay double. So we see it specifically in this case that he does not have to pay double, but in a case where he misappropriated it, could be that Rabbi Yochanan would say that he has to pay double. So we know for sure Rabbi Yochanan would say if he never misappropriated it, then yes, he has to pay double. If it's just eating nicely and is being taken care of, he has to pay double. And regarding the case where he did misappropriate it, we don't have a clear proof of what Rabbi Yochanan said. Amar Rav Sheshat hatoen tanat gana bepikadon kevan sheshalach bo yad patur. Rav Sheshat says the exact opposite of Rabbi Chia bar Yosef. Rabbi Chia bar Yosef said that in order to be liable, he has to first misappropriate it and then swear falsely, and then he has to pay double. Rav Sheshat says that if a shomer claims that it was stolen and he had misappropriated it, he does not have to pay. So it's the exact opposite. My tama, hachi kama rachamanav, nikra ba'al habayit Elohim im lo shalach yado, ha-shalach yado patur. He quotes the very same pasuk that Rabbi Chia bar Yosef also used, but he interprets it differently. And so he says that the shomer will come to the judge and he will make a vow that he did not misappropriate it. So only in that case, if then, and he in fact did not misappropriate it, and then witnesses come and say that he has it, then he has to pay double. But if he actually had misappropriated it before, then he is not liable. Amar le Rav Nachman, a challenge to Rav Sheshat by Rav Nachman. But aren't there 3 vows that we make this shomer vow to? He has to say 3 things. Shavua shelo pashati ba, shavua shelo shalachti ba yad, shavua shena birshuti. He has to vow that he was not negligent in safeguarding it. Right? A shomer, if he just leaves the door open and the cow leaves and gets lost or stolen, so then a shomer is liable. So he has to say, I was careful, I was not negligent. He also has to say, I did not misappropriate it, I didn't use it for myself. Thirdly, he has to say, I don't have it, right? Because we have to make sure that he's not claiming that it was stolen, but really he has it and he's hiding it the whole time. So those are the 3. So it sounds like there's a comparison between the 3. My lav shivua shelo shalachti bayad dumya deshva shena birshuti. Ma shivua shena birshuti ki megalia de milta deita birshute chayav. Af shivua shelo shalachti bayad ki megalia milita teshalach bayad chayav. So shouldn't we make a comparison between the second and third vows? Just like in the second vow, right? The second vow should be the same as the third vow. Just like in the third vow where he says, I swear I don't have it in my possession. If we find out that in fact he did have it in his possession, then he has to pay double. So too, he makes a vow, I didn't use it for myself. So if we find out he did use it for himself, also he would have to pay double. That's a challenge to Rav Sheshat. Rav Sheshat answers, Amar le, lo shivua shelo shalachti bayad, dumya de shelo pashati ba. Now I'm going to compare the first 2 shivuot together. The one that I did not, the second one, that I did not use it, is similar to the first vow that I was not negligent. Ma shivua shelo pashati ba, ki megal yamiti de pasha ba, patur mikefel. Just like if he says, I was not negligent, and it turns out that he was negligent. He left the door wide open. Then he does not have to pay double. That's the law. You don't pay double in that case. He was just negligent. He was a bad shomer. So there's no double payment in that case. So too, if when he swears, I didn't use it for myself, and it turns out he did use it for himself, also, he will not have to pay double. So just because you have 3 shivuot, and it's true for the third one, if it turns out that he's wrong, he does pay double, but for the first one, not. And so this one's in the middle. I can compare, instead of comparing it to the third one, I can compare it to the first one, and therefore there is no challenge from this source to Rav Sheshat. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.